In the summer of 2002, the director of the British intelligence agency MI6, Richard Dearlove, traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet with the director of the CIA, George Tenet. The topic of the meeting was Iraq and its leader, Saddam Hussein. In the meeting, the CIA director shared classified information with his British counterpart, who then traveled back to London to 10 Downing Street, the home of the Prime Minister, Tony Blair. Dearlove told his Prime Minister everything about what was really happening behind the scenes in the United States. How the US was planning to invade Iraq no matter what. It was a highly classified meeting, but notes were taken and classified and put into a memo. That memo was later leaked to British author and journalist Michael Smith, who published it in 2005. And that's what we're looking at. A secret meeting, and the memo it produced, meant only for the eyes of top British officials. It was an explosive leak. What we see is that Dearlove tells his Prime Minister everything he heard in Washington a few days earlier, and that this was a very different story than the one the Bush administration was telling to the public. That an American invasion was inevitable, that Bush's people were fixated on removing Saddam Hussein from power, no matter what, and that the US government was blatantly cooking up intel and facts to help sell their invasion. This document shows us how power really works in our world. How a small group of people decided to topple a dictator, to occupy a country, and then invented a story to support their plan. It was a false story, but it helped them sell a horrifying war. It's a story that is revealed in detail by the Downing Street memo.
States like these constitute an axis of evil.
One last chance to avoid war. The entire world must know that we will take whatever action is necessary.
American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. America faces an enemy who has no regard for conventions of war or rules of morality.
Bush's war took the life of an estimated 500,000 Iraqis and thousands more who fought for their country. And over the course of a decade occupying Iraq, no weapons were found, no nuclear facilities, no mobile weapons labs. In fact, it seemed like Iraq had dismantled its nuclear program back in 1991 and the rest of its chemical and biological weapons just a few years later. After the invasion, the US never allowed the UN inspectors back into the country to help with their search. The US would never find a way to link the Iraqi regime to Al-Qaeda or to anthrax. Colin Powell, the Secretary of State, who played a major role in selling this war to the international community, would later say that he regrets his part in starting the war.
Deeply regret that some of the information I presented, which was multi-source, was wrong.
Hans Blix, the chief weapons inspector for the UN, would comment later that year that it is sort of fascinating that you can have 100% certainty about weapons of mass destruction and zero certainty about where they are. We may never know what was in the heart and minds of these senior leaders, whether they truly believed their own lies, whether they felt justified in the choices they made. But what we can learn from this story is how these leaders behaved when they thought no one was watching, when they thought they could tell a compelling story to the public while having a totally different set of motivations, and how with enough fear and enough deception, you can lead an entire society into an unprovoked war, changing the course of history in the process.
This is not the time to falter. This is the time for this House, not just this government or indeed this Prime Minister, but for this House to give a lead. To show that we will stand up for what we know to be right. To show that we will confront the tyrannies and dictatorships and terrorists who put our way of life at risk. To show at the moment of decision that we have the courage to do the right thing. I beg to move the motion.